What's up, guys? This is Tony Tone, the Chess Salsero. Guys, today I want to talk about a very, 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 very important topic. Very, very instructive. This is going to be probably the longest video I'm going to be making on my YouTube channel here because it is just very, very important that you guys understand this. Excuse me. Today we're going to talk about how to evaluate a position, how to correctly evaluate a position in chess, what to do when you don't know what to do, what to look for, what do you play, when, how, all these considerations. Because a lot of times, especially when I was a beginner, I just didn't know what to do. I knew how the pieces moved. I kind of understood the beginning a little, but I didn't know what to do in given positions, especially when I got to the middle game, and let alone the end game, which is just deep. So this is going to be a more intermediate / advanced discussion because beginners need to know this as well, but as you go through your chess journey here in your education, a lot of this is going to make sense a little later down the road. However, I can't stress enough how important this is. So back in the day when I was trying to become better, and this is pre-internet and then post-internet, I used to just read chess books left and right, you name it. And one of my two favorite chess books that I've read long time ago, I've read them twice each, is a great book I'm going to recommend called The Amateur's Mind by Jeremy Silman. He also wrote a sequel to that called Reassess Your Chess. And what he basically says is, and discusses is, how to evaluate a position correctly based on finding imbalances in the position that you can exploit against your opponent. Let me say that again. You have to be trained to find chess imbalances, and we're going to talk about all the different types of imbalances, what to look for, and we're going to actually go through the game that you see here in front of you in a few here. But I just want to talk about this more and more before we get into the game, because it's not going to make sense unless I break some of this stuff down, because it gets complicated. Excuse me. So you're going to learn how to search for these imbalances in every single position that you ever play, from every move in every game forever. You got to train your eyes, your brain, to constantly and consistently evaluate move per move imbalances on the chessboard that hopefully your opponent doesn't spot and you could take advantage of. This has to become a routine, so you'll become adept at picking out every little imbalance in every single position or situation that you find yourself in. This is going to teach you what to do when you feel lost. What do I move? What piece? Why? How? When? Where? What plan do I need to make? A lot of times you find yourselves in these positions where you just don't know what to do, because chess is so deep. No two games are alike. You can play 1 billion games, and all 1 billion games will be different than the one before it. This is how deep chess is for such a little small, 64 squares, 32 pieces. But that's how deep this game is. So I'm going to teach you guys the way I learned it from these chess experts and these grandmasters that I study. And I studied the world champions of back in the day and the current world champion. I read books. This is before the internet, and even after the internet, I watch YouTube videos. And you want to try to emulate how the grandmasters think and the chess experts. So first things first, we're going to talk about just basic things you need to look for when you feel lost on a chessboard. What do you do? What do you do, right? And you don't want to give away. You want to have a poker face, like in poker. You don't want to give away to your opponent, who's probably looking at you on and off throughout a game, that you're lost. You don't want to give away the fact that you're lost, you don't know what to do, because they're going to exploit that, especially if he or she understands all of this stuff. How to find imbalances in the precision, how to exploit them, what to do, and so on and so on. So you're in a given chess position, not this one. Let's say you're just playing chess online or over the board in front of somebody. Excuse me. So the first thing you want to do is you want to comb the chessboard, and you want to do what I call a recon. What is a recon? If you think about the Army and the Marines and the military, they go on reconnaissance missions, and that what they basically do is they sweep the area. They look for everything, everywhere, and every nook and cranny, every tree, bush, hill, whatever, to find any danger. So this is what you need to do. So I'm going to keep saying the word recon over and over so you understand what it means. You have to survey the board. It's called board vision. It's funny that you can actually miss something that's so obvious on such a small board because you're so focused on whatever you're focused on. But you need to make this little recon check a routine. You need to make it as just, it's just part of what you do every single time you play a chess game. And so what you want to do is, first thing you want to do is you want to look for any captures. You want to look for any threats against you, any threats against your pieces, against your king, any threats against any particular square, and vice versa. You want to look for captures. You want to look for threats. You want to look for hanging pieces. Hanging pieces means you want to look for any undefended pieces in the enemy camp. Can you grab a pawn for free, a knight, a rook, a bishop, whatever? You also want to scan the board and search for, and this might sound foreign to a lot of people because, this is more advanced way of thinking, but it's the hallmark of advanced chess, and that is to find and control specific squares, specific territory on the chessboard, a specific diagonal, file, or rank, or even just an individual square. It's amazing how they literally just fight for a single square on this entire chessboard to gain some sort of type of advantage. And these guys, like I said, there's a masters and above to the grandmaster level. So you want to look for weak squares, hanging pieces. You want to look for any potential captures or threats against you or towards your opponent. You want to do a recon every single move. While the opponent is thinking, you need to be scanning that board and doing a recon constantly. So when it's your turn to move, you don't have to waste so much time because you've already surveyed the land for danger in his camp or in yours. You want to look for. I did a video about outposts. You want to look for, outposts for your knights, specifically your knights and your bishops. You want to search for holes in the position. I'm going to talk about holes soon. I have my cat behind me. And you want to look for tactics. I have a video on basic tactics, and I have a video on intermediate tactics. You want to do tactical puzzles as much as possible if you really want to get good at chess. On top of a million other things you have to study, but tactics is huge. You have to train your eyes to see tactical shots, tactical combinations, tactical motifs. Just anything with tactics in a given position that you can exploit. So we got. Look for captures, threats, hanging pieces, weak squares. Look for outposts. Look for tactics. Look to gain a spatial advantage. Part of this video is going to be talking about all the different types of advantages in chess. And I can't stress enough how the understanding of that is crucial to your understanding of chess itself. So the different types of advantages would be like a material advantage, a positional advantage, a tactical advantage, a spatial advantage, an advantage in development, an advantage in time, tempo, and initiative. Time in chess is huge. It's one of the biggest advantages that you could have in the game of chess. That and spatial control. So. When you do your recon, you want to scan to see who has a lead in development. You want to make sure that you're developed ahead of your opponent, black or white. Quicker than your opponent. The heart of this is based on understanding the dynamic and static differences in a chess game, which are known as imbalances, that exist in every single position. By recognizing these different imbalances, it'll enable you to spot what to do and when. So it'll answer your question, what I'm lost. What do I do? This video is going to teach you that. Um, I want to stress this. You cannot basically do what you want in chess. That might sound weird until you get good enough to do that, where you can actually violate certain rules or principles in chess. Meaning, you have to read the board. The board is going to tell you, in most cases, what to do and when. Everything is based on, just like in life, a given situation, but on the chessboard, everything is based on a given position, how to evaluate a position correctly, and that the principles inherent in that position will basically tell you what to do. You can't just do what you want. You must do what the position calls for. So you're going to learn to read the board and obey its dictates correctly as much as possible. If the position on the board, for example, calls you to attack or attack the king, well, then you attack. If it calls for you to just, make a quiet positional move, then you do that. If it calls for, spotting a tactic and executing that tactic to gain a short-term advantage, you do that. Learning how to spot these imbalances is crucial to the understanding of what to do when. So, with all that being said, you're also going to learn when to execute counterplay. Sometimes you're under attack and the attack is strong and you don't know what to do, but you're going to figure out by reading a board correctly when it's your time and turn for counterplay, when you can hit back. You get hit like boxing. You get hit, you want to counter back. But you can't just do it just to do it. It has to be in a given position based on the principles inherent in that position. And we're going to go through all that just studying this one position right here that I specifically picked from the book that I told you I read about that I highly recommend, called The Amateur's Mind by Jeremy Silman, and the other one called Reassess Your Chess, or How to Reassess Your Chess, which is his follow-up to his Amateur's Mind book. So, especially if you're a novice, a beginner, an amateur, this is valuable information, guys. So, let's start with this position right here. So, what I'm going to do is I'm going to point out what the imbalances are. We're going to assess them, and then we're going to make moves based on the assessment of those imbalances. Okay? So, for example, let's count up who has a lead in development. So, White has 1, 2, 3, 4 pieces developed. Black has 1, 2, 3. So White is ahead in development. So that's one imbalance that is in our favor right now. That first assessment of who has a development lead goes to us. Then we're going to see pawn structure. We're going to see that, I've done all these videos on pawn formation and structures and pawn football and pawn play. You have to understand and look for who has the better pawn structure, pawn formation as an advantage. So, for example, he has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 pawns. I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So, excuse me. The pawns are equal. So, if we look at just material, and let's count up material. I have 3 minor pieces. A minor piece is the knights and the bishops, and he has 3 as well. The difference is he has 2 bishops and 1 knight. I have 2 knights and 1 bishop. And you're going to learn in this game that one of the imbalances is a battle between the minor pieces in chess, which is huge. I can't stress that enough. So, for example, the interplay between bishop and knights, trying to make one superior to the other, is huge in the game of chess, because as you're playing, especially in the middle game, you're going to try to gain advantages based on only your minor pieces until you head into the end game where the major pieces take over, the rooks and the queens, and you might have the bishops left or the knights, either way. But that interplay, that battle between knights and bishops, is a huge component of understanding middle game play and finding imbalances in the position. For the pawn structure, you want to look for structural weaknesses. And the other advantage is space. Space is a massive advantage in the game of chess. He who controls more territory and space, more real estate on a chessboard. There are no guaranteed wins, but your odds are increased exponentially because of this. You own more space. Space meaning more squares, more diagonals, more files, more ranks, whatever. The more space, the better. You want to try to annex more territory than your opponent. And that goes in line with controlling certain files and squares. He who controls what and which files and squares, ranks, or diagonals is part of that spatial advantage. The other one we're going to talk about is time. The initiative is when you're dictating the tempo of a game. This is like a temporary imbalance, but it's a crucial one. He who has an advantage in time, which we're going to talk about here soon. So I have basically listed all the advantages there, which are basically the imbalances that you're looking for. You're going to start to weigh all of these options. And this, again, we're getting to intermediate, advanced discussion here of evaluating precision. But it is so, so important to understand, guys. So let's go through this game. So we counted up the pawns. We're equal in material from pawns and regular pieces. I have a castled king. He does not. So that's an advantage for us. There's a semi-open file here on the E file and even the D file. And usually what you want to do when you find a open file or a semi-open file, you want to place your rooks there and control all of those squares on those files. Because, again, you want to take away space from your opponent that you can use to place your pieces on that'll deny him access to that valuable space, especially if it's in his camp. So as far as time, right now we can't tell, and initiative and tempo, it's not clear yet until we start playing the game who has the time advantage. So if we see here, I have also a spatial advantage. Why? Because every time you push a pawn up, you're gaining space on your opponent. All of his pawns don't pass the 6th rank. I have a pawn here on E5, which is huge, and it's backed up and defended by the knight on F3. So that's an advantage for me. So I am just pointing out all of these little imbalances that you need to look for as you're playing the game. I have a castled king. I have more developed pieces. I have a pawn into his camp on the E5 square, so I have a spatial advantage there, and I see a hole. What is a hole? A hole is where you can plop a knight, especially a knight or a bishop, into it as an outpost, which is a great positional advantage for you. And if I look in his camp, I see a major hole right here on F6. Why? Because I want to eventually get my knight there and have him just sit there and controlling all the squares in his camp with that knight. If I can make that happen. That's the other thing. You have to try to create these holes, these outposts. They're called advanced support points as well. And it's a major, major positional advantage for you guys. There was an old world champion way back decades and decades ago, probably the 40s or 50s, I can't remember the name, Wilhelm Steinitz. He stated that in order to defeat knights with the bishops, you have to take away their support points, meaning their outposts. So if you can find a way to create an outpost for your knights, oh man, that is massive. Or your bishops, but mainly the knights. Okay? So we're actually going to start playing this game, or I'm going to show you the moves that happen in this game. I don't know who are the players here, but I just picked this game from the book that they use to illustrate this example of how to assess imbalances in a precision. So we already checked space. White's winning on that. I have an advanced pawn, so I have spatial advantage. I have a castled king, so I have a safer king. Nobody controls really the D or the E file, not yet. He has undeveloped rooks and a knight here. He has an uncastled king. So right now I have a slight advantage if I just assess this entire position in its entirety before I even make a move. And I have a hole right here on f6, which I, hopefully could put a knight on there if possible, if I can pull that off. It's very strategic in what we're doing here. So let's see what happens. Boom. So the knight jumps to b5. Why does he do that? Because like I said earlier, when you're looking for basic things, when you don't know what to do, look, I see that the c pawn, the c7 pawn, is hanging. No one's defending it. And if I were to take there, I'm actually forking the rook and the king. And if the king moves, because of that, he forfeits the right to castle, and I gain the king. So this is a major advantage. So this is the first thing that pops out when I'm looking at this position. After I evaluate everything I just named, I see, bam, that I can attack the c7 pawn that's weak. That square is weak, and it's a hanging pawn. So he has to do something about this. Not only that, if he were to move the pawn here, here's another hole I could put my knight on to create a huge outpost on d6. So let's see what he does. Boom. He sees it as a major threat, so he obviously removes the threat by taking the knight. The problem is I take with my bishop, bam, and this is a tempo. What is a tempo? A tempo is a time advantage where I'm forcing you to make a move that you don't want to make, that you don't want to do. In other words, you might have had plans, but now, man, you got to deal with this, and you're going to lose time because you're being forced to do something instead of something else that you wanted to do. So now you have to either block, move the king, or push the pawn forward to deal with this check, this attack on the king. Because the king cannot stay under attack. It is illegal. So he moves the pawn. So now he equalizes, removes the tempo, because now he's forcing me to move out. So I move back. All right. So, he moves to d7. Now, this is huge. Why? Because he sees he can double attack the e5 pawn, which I only have single attacked. Right there, right? I don't have a dark square bishop that opposes his dark square bishop all the way here on g7. So I have to find a way to either double defend this pawn, this crucial center pawn, because the pawns in the middle of a game and on the D of the E file in the center of the board are the most important. They truly are. So I double defended with the queen and the knight. This looks to me, without even finishing this whole thing, that this whole game is going to be based on that E5 square and trying to remove that pawn there, which is like a thorn in the side of the black army. So look at this. He triple attacks this pawn on e5, and I'm double defending it. So white has a decision to make here. Do I take the queen? Do I triple attack it by putting my rook on the e file? What do you do here? White decided to take the queen so he doesn't lose the tempo. The knight takes it. And now the rook, like I said earlier, occupies an open file all to himself, controlling every single square on that file, which is great. So again, every time we make a move, we are reassessing. We're doing a recon. We're reassessing all the different imbalances that change, because every move changes the entire dynamic of the entire chess game on that board. That could be a simple pawn move. It could be a quiet move or not. You have to always train your brain and your eyes to reassess the entire position, every single move of every single game until you complete the game, whether you get mated or not. So black doesn't want to lose a tempo, so he says, I'm going to counterattack you, and you're not going to control this file because now I'm counterattacking your control of the D file. So what does white do? Bam, he takes it so he can keep his time tempo initiative, and now the king cannot castle. He has to take the rook, and he does. So we reassess now who has an advantage here. White still has a slight advantage. Why? Because now he can occupy the d file again. White has forfeited the right to castle. This pawn is not being attacked twice, and I have a good bishop here. I also did a video, guys, on my YouTube channel about the importance of activity versus non-activity and good and bad pieces. You want to look at that as well because it's part of this entire evaluation of a position. So he does that. He attacks. He gains time. It's a forced move, so I gain a tempo point. I have the initiative right now. It's a time. A time or tempo or initiative advantage is usually a temporary one. If you can maintain the initiative in a chess game, the longer, the better, the more advantage you have for yourself heading into that end game. He gets out the way, and now he pushes his pawn here. So this game seems to really come down to control of that e5 square and white being tied down to the defense of that pawn, which might hurt him later in the game. So here he comes again. He gains time by counterattacking the rook on the d file, and so he's probably going to have to take it. Oh, he doesn't. Okay. So he gave up control of this file, so now we reassess. Black has control of that d file now, but now white is double defending the e5 pawn here. They're starting to push pawns. So if you look at the pawn play, we have 3 pawns on the A, B, and C file, and so does black, so that's equal. And white has 4 pawns, just like black does. So pawn-wise, it's basically equal there. He wants to stop him from going to A4, and he defends the bishop at the same time. This is a nice little pawn island right here, by the way. Very strong. Oh, so he pushes anyway, because if he takes, and then he messes up his nice little pawn island. So what he's trying to do here, black, is break his little nice pawn island here to create a hole in this position. White pushes. Every time you push, guys, a pawn, you're gaining space on your opponent. He's controlling this. All of this is his on top of the 2 squares that they're on. So the knight comes back and repositions itself on d7 to reattack this pawn twice. The king comes up. The king, towards the end game, guys, especially when the queen gets out of the game, it becomes an attacking piece, which is good. You need it for defense and attack. It can't just sit back at home doing nothing. It has to help its troops the way they're defending the king as well. It's teamwork, 100%. So he's now attacking the bishop here. When you can centralize your knight, come here and protect the e5 pawn in any kind of way towards the end game, that's a great position for the king to be in, provided there are no queens on the board. Okay. Now the reason he can move the knight here is because this rook is still protecting the e5 pawn, which is attacked by the bishop here. Now, if you notice, the entire game, this bishop is a bad bishop. It has no activity. It has no purpose. It just bites on this e5 square, which is a positional advantage for white, which is what you want to maintain as much as possible so he doesn't use that bishop. It's as if that bishop is not even on the board. He takes with the bishop. He could have taken with this pawn, but it would have opened the file here, and you don't want that for white, because then he can come in here and infiltrate on the second rank. And whenever you guys excuse me, put a rook on the 7th rank, the opponent's 7th rank or second, it is a major positional advantage for you if you can pull that off. So he doesn't allow it, and he takes with the bishop, keeping his little pawn island with a bishop though. So he comes here with tempo, and he attacks a hanging knight. Again, you're looking for threats, captures, anything hanging, and he found that. So white has to move back to his f3 square, and redefend the e5 pawn, which has been there almost the entire game. He comes back again to attack it twice, and the king comes in as a third defender of the e5 square. So if you notice, guys, throughout this entire game, as we're evaluating this position over and over and over, move by move, it seems to be more and more the theme is the crucial control of the e5 square, reattacking it, redefending it, repositioning your pieces to reattack and redefend over and over and over and over. I don't know why he made that move. He's on his second rank, defending his pawn. Okay, look, that's now I get why he did that. If we go back to figure out why would he move his rook to a8? Why? Because he wanted to, look at this, to attack this pawn 3 times. Now that it's defended 3 times as well, they're putting more pressure on that square, on that pawn. This entire theme of this game, of this exercise here, is obvious. It's the control of that e5 square. So this is how far the game, the evaluation of this position went in the Amateur's Mind book, which I chose. Apparently it says here that Black actually went on to win this game because of White's defense of that pawn, meaning it's tied down to the defense of that pawn. So it can't really do anything else because it's constantly being attacked. So I don't know how this game went exactly, but the book says that Black went on to win a long, tough game, but mainly because of this pawn here on e5. So guys, if we go to the beginning and we assess, this ain't the beginning of the game. We kind of got it towards heading into the middle game here. The queens are still on the board, but again, it just goes to show you, I want to reiterate all the things that you need to look for when you feel lost, when you don't know what to do, when you're just like, now what? Okay, understanding how to find imbalances in a given position every single time in every single game against whoever you play forever is going to train your brain to spot these things much sooner, much quicker, and without even that much of a thought, combined with understanding the principles in the game of chess, guys. So just to recap, you want to look for captures. You want to look for threats. You want to look for hanging pieces. You want to look for weak squares. You want to look for holes in the position, meaning look for an outpost. And if you don't know what an outpost is, look at my video about outposts and the importance of them. Look for tactical considerations, tactical shots. Look at my videos on tactics, basics and intermediate. I'm going to do an advanced one soon here. Look for counterplay. Look to see who has a lead in development. Usually, guys, when you have a lead in development, you have the initiative. It leads to a time advantage because your pieces are out in the field of play sooner than the other guys. So you can execute some, operational things while he's still stuck at home with his pieces being, undeveloped. Understand that trying to gain time and the initiative in a game dictates the tempo of a game. Even though it's temporary, you want that time advantage. Make sure that rooks belong on open and semi-open files for spatial and positional advantages. Rooks belong on the 7th rank as much as possible. And another huge thing, I just did a video on pass pawns, playing pawn football and the creation of pass pawns. But when you get a pass pawn, if you're lucky enough to pull that off, you want to have your rooks behind those pass pawns. That is absolutely crucial. So if you go back here real quick, he moved here because he spotted a weakness on c7. He's attacking it. He takes. This is a tempo because the king is under attack. A re-tempo, like a counter tempo. He says get out of the way. A double attack on the e5 pawn. Double defend. He poses a question to White. What are you going to do now? I'm triple attacking it. So White decides to take the queen. The queens are off the board. We're heading into the end of the middle game, into the end game. Black has a very bad bishop here. It's been hemmed in the entire game. I'm just listing these imbalances so you understand how to recognize them and how to exploit them to your advantage. He doesn't have, it's as if this bishop on g7 is not even in the game. This is why he keeps his pawn here. I don't know why he doesn't do this and try to get it out of here, but whatever. White occupies a huge important D middle center file, the D file. Counterplay he takes. He stops him from castling. Reattacks, controls the d-file. He moves out of the way. Pushes his pawn to gain space. Rook finally, the black rook finally developed from h8 to d8, opposing the control of the d-file that white has. So he gets out of the way and redefends that pawn. He could have taken him here, but that would have been a disadvantage to him. Do you know why? If he would have taken this rook and he comes back here, right? Eventually this knight will come back here, double attacking this pawn, and there's only one defense of it because you don't have a rook now. So that's probably why he decided not to exchange rooks here. Again, because he's assessing the imbalances in the position, what's an advantage for him versus what's a disadvantage to him. He moves it back, redefends the pawn. Pushes the pawn, protects the bishop, attacks the pawn, more space. He comes back, reattacks that pawn. The king is coming up because he sees he's going to have to play a role in defending this pawn in the future. From way over here on the g1 square. Attacks his bishop. He's getting closer. Defends the bishop to double defend the e5 pawn in the event that the knight on b6 takes the bishop on c4. Keeps his island. Attacks a hanging knight. Redefends the pawn. Reattacks the pawn. Brings the king all the way up to defend that pawn. Now we understand why he brought the rook to a8, because he wanted to bring it to a5 to triple attack that pawn. And this is where not the game ended here, but the exercise ends. So guys, I know this was a little complex and is very more intermediate advanced level, but I cannot stress enough, as you continue your chess education and journey as a beginner, a novice, an intermediate player, a club player, whatever. This is going to help you at any level to learn how to assess and evaluate a position correctly, not incorrectly, correctly. It has to be based on these principles and these things here. This isn't Tony telling you this. These are chess experts, chess books, grandmasters, international masters. This is what they do. This is what they look at. This is how they play. You need to emulate them. You're not going to emulate somebody who stinks at the game of chess, right? You're going to emulate the best. And these are what the chess authors say. I've read other books that say the same thing. The chess experts, the coaches out there, the grandmasters, the world champions, you name it. I follow them to impart the knowledge that you're receiving here today, okay? Very important you understand this, guys. You want to evaluate every single game. You always want to do a post-game analysis called a post-mortem of every single game you play. I don't care if you play 1 or 2 games a week, 1 a month, 100 a month, whatever. Whether you're black or white, whether you win or lose, it is crucial that you evaluate your games, post-game analysis. This is why I do live blitz games so you guys can see, because I'm telling you my thought process as I'm doing it. It will gain you a much deeper insight and understanding to the game of chess like you've never understood it before. You can't just think your own way. You have to play and understand these rules, guidelines, and principles in order to get better at this game. Because if you play someone else who understands this stuff, but you don't, you ain't never beaten that person. You just will never beat them because they understand this much deeper than you. And if you want to gain that understanding, you can check out my YouTube channel or other people. If you look at other places that teach chess, YouTube, TikTok, the chess websites, chess.com, Lead Chess, Chessable, whatever, they will tell you the same things just in their own way. And I'm just basically regurgitating factual expertise information from the best chess players out there, old school and new school, to help you understand this game better, guys. Because I used to play this, I used to get frustrated so much back in the day when I was a teenager in my 20s, when I was in the military, and I just kept losing and losing and losing and losing. You know, after a while, the game of chess wasn't fun no more to me as much as I love it. Why? Because it ain't no fun to constantly lose and never understand why you keep losing, right? You need to understand how to win, how to lose, what to do, how to overcome, how to get out of certain positions, how to understand tactical and positional considerations, principles, tactics. I mean, you name it. This game requires, like no other, that you study the game of chess. You cannot just simply play this game and just play Blitz online and become this great chess player without understanding this stuff. Playing alone does not suffice. You must study this game way more than you play it. The reason I've gotten to the level that I'm at, and I say this humbly, is because I study this game 80% of the time and I literally only play it 20%. 80-20 or even 70-30. That's the imbalance you need to understand this game at a much deeper level. You can't just think your own kind of way and do what you want until you understand these concepts, principles, strategies, imbalances, evaluation, of a position correctly. And then later on, as you understand this, then you could add your own style and you can become more creative once you understand the foundational aspects of what I'm trying to teach you here of the game of chess. I can't stress this enough. I play with certain people, family, friends, whoever, and they don't understand this. And I try to help them and they just play, and they're always online playing or in person, whatever. But what happens is I end up playing them, and I'm just being honest here, and they never win because I never see an improvement in their chess understanding. This game is about understanding, not memorization, understanding the deep principles and concepts and strategies in this game. And so they just plateau. They just stay where they're at, and we play. I'll beat somebody 100 times, and I hate to do it, but it's like, dude, you have to, study more than you play. I can't stress that enough, guys. So, guys, I hope you learned a lot. This is a lot. This is probably my longest chess video on my channel. It's very, 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 very instructive. Study this. Play this over a million times. Go try to buy those chess books or find it online somewhere, guys. Jeremy Silman, The Amateur's Mind, or Reassess Your Chess. I'm sure there are others, but those are the two main ones that I use to help me understand this game the way I do now. And it'll take your game to a new level. It'll help you grow in your chess understanding, in techniques, in principles, guidelines, you name it, tactics, strategy, positional play. It's all there, guys. You need to read, educate yourself, self-education, and play. And you see, even my cat agrees. You hear my cat? She just meowed. You see, she's saying yes, do what he says. Anyway, thank you guys for watching. I really appreciate it, guys. Thank you for always coming to my channel. Please subscribe if you can. I'm also on Instagram under chess_Salcedo and on YouTube under chess.Salcedo27. Hope you learned a lot. This is Tony Tone. I am out. Peace.